Hello, dear. It's Heather, and you're watching Save Today with Heather J. I am somebody who has spent her entire adult life living paycheck to paycheck and being one life event away from financial crisis. And that is a very uncomfortable way to live and really cannot continue any longer. It has gone on for far too long. So I am taking steps to take control of my finances, and in order to take control, I have to set up a budget. I have to know what's coming in and what's going out and how I'm going to handle that. I can't continue to be reactionary in how I'm dealing with my budget. I have to be very proactive in order for things to change. I have spent, again, a lifetime of making poor decisions, and it's going to take a very concerted effort to change those habits. One of the things I have decided to do is to create a budget. I have tried this several times in the past, over and over and over again, in various different forms, and it hasn't really stuck. In order to try and change that, I have decided to create this channel. And how I feel like that's going to change me is because I have to check in with these videos constantly with you guys on, a very regular schedule. And honestly, that schedule isn't because of the YouTube. That schedule is because that's what a budget needs. And then I just get to share that with you. There is a lot of checking in that's going to happen, that has to happen in order to really stay on top of the budget. And that constant check-in has been very hard for me. And so I'm creating this channel to keep myself accountable. I'm inviting you guys along because that company, those videos and those likes and the subscribers really does make a difference on my mental space. I am not just doing this by myself, for myself. I have a group of people who are here with me taking this kind of road trip, if you will. They're on this journey with me and keeping me company for that. So I've created this channel for that reason. But I also wanted to bring some of my personality into the channel. I personally find this kind of checking and rechecking to be very dry and not very exciting work, and there's certainly way more exciting things going on in scrolling for that mental stimulation that doesn't happen. So I have decided to also bring in the back end of my channel a project I'm working on. This is something that brings me great joy, that is something I really look forward to, and something I'm wanting to spend more time on. So that will always kind of be in the background of these videos, and I will discuss where I'm at with each project at the end of my videos. Today, I'm wanting to go over my June paycheck number 3 setup. For me, June was a 3 paycheck month, and that is just based on where the first of the month lies within my pay cycle. Rent is due on the 1st, and so that is when I have to have that money in there. That's when the first, anyway. For me, I am an hourly employee, not salaried. 32 to 40 hours a week is considered full-time. When I create these budgets, I estimate 38 hours a week, and I estimate about 25% takeout for my taxes. I make $20 an hour at this time, so my estimates when I set them up is $20 an hour times 38 hours times 2 weeks, take away 25%. And when I do that, what I am given is $1,140 as an estimate to each check. That's going to probably be fairly consistent unless hours at work change and I have to reduce that. I don't think I would ever purposely schedule 40 hours because I never actually get 40 hours, and I want to underestimate my time and overestimate my taxes so that I'm not shortchanging myself at the end of everything. If something happens at work and my hours need to start being cut back for a period of time, then this estimate would go down. If and when I ever get a raise or a promotion, obviously, then this estimate goes up. I do carry an other line within my schedule and budget, but it's not something I ever consistently plan or assume I'm going to have. I don't at this time have a second job. I don't get any child support, and I don't have any kind of investments or scheduled payment plans that I would expect to get from that. So that line will most often just be zero. That is going to be for times when I get a tax return, or if I get birthday or Christmas money and I wanted to spend that within my budget instead of having that be flexible spending. At this time and in the past, when I get money for those things, that's free money for me, and I go and spend that on the things that I wanted to have just to have, and I don't use that within my budget. Now, as I become more conscious of what's going on in my budget, I may end up carrying that into that. Taxes, I do make my big purchases with taxes fairly frequently, but I'm also reaching a stage in my life where I'm no longer going to be getting large tax returns. I don't have children. I don't have earned income credit or any of the things that, I mean, I have children. They're just no longer in that age group. So even the taxes for this other line might end up kind of going away. So that means that my income estimate for this pay period is $1,140. That's what I'm expecting to bring in to cover me for this next 2 weeks. Then I have to pay my fixed expenses, all of my bills. These are the things I have to pay whether I like it or not. And so I go through my calendar and see what's going to come out for what time frame, and that's what we estimate in here. So my first expense is the phone bill for $236.51. This phone bill has 2 phone lines, 1 iPad, and home internet in it. So it is quite high at $236.51. When I can get some of these other things squared away and moved out of my consistent budget, I am going to get my phone bill set up in auto pay, but at this time it's not yet set up in auto pay. The auto pay would actually reduce that phone bill by $5 per line, so a total of $20 each month for this phone bill, which is going to be huge and is something that I'm kind of moving forward as my next area of focus. But right now, that's not where we're set up at. I do have a U-Haul initially. So I have 3 storage boxes of all of my household supplies stored in another state. When I moved to this location, I opted to put all of my stuff in storage bins and leave them out of state, because at the time I was moving, it wasn't 100% certain where I was going. I had 3 options that I was exploring, and I wasn't sure which direction I was going to be led. So I put them all in storage. So I have 1 box that has a due date of the 16th of the month, and 2 boxes that have a due date of the 28th of the month. And when I initially set this one up, my monthly paycheck, I had the 2 that were due the 28th of May and the one that was due the 16th of June. And I did not do the 28th of June. Even though it was a 3 paycheck month, my brain wasn't processing the back end payment. So initially, when I set this up, it was just $97.98. I did eventually realize and correct that error. So out of this paycheck, I have a total of payment on 3 boxes, June 16th and June 28th. So $293.97 coming out for U-Haul in this pay period. Then I have a subscription that I pay $10.82 a month for. And I have a one-time purchase from Best Buy that is for some security on my phone and laptops. and this one's only $5. It's a yearly renewal, and when they sent me the email, there was it was regularly $49.99, and somehow I have a $44.99 credit, so it's just going to be $5. Not 100% certain why I have that credit, but I'm grateful for it, and I'm going to take it. And I'm not certain that I would have agreed to the payment if it really was the $49.99. Things are pretty tight right now, and I'm not sure how I would have balanced the security of I'm not sure how I would have made that work. I fully believe that that security is worth the $50. I just don't know that I have it right now in my budget. That feels like an extra expense, but $5 was easy to swallow. And so all of those together means that my fixed expenses are estimated to be $546.30. Again, I did have to adjust that. It was significantly less when I had that error in there. As far as I'm aware, there's nothing else coming out during this pay period, but because I'm still very early in my scheduling budgeting journey, there's still things that are kind of sneaking in that I just wasn't aware were there, and probably really should have been if I had been tracking longer, sooner, forever. I would know these things are there, and honestly they probably would have been taken care of a long time ago, but for right now that's all that's in this estimate. The next thing I like to go over is my flexible spending. My flexible spending are things that I have some control over. I can choose where I go. I watch my groceries, dining out, transportation, art, and miscellaneous. Those things I have some control over, whether I get them or not, where I buy from, and therefore that has impact on what that will be, and those can fluctuate greatly. When I set up these estimates, I give myself a consistent amount each week. So for example, my groceries, I've given myself an estimate of $110 a week for a total of 6 weeks for this month, for a total of $660 for the month. What I'm finding out as I become more and more aware of my budgeting is that I don't spend my flexible spending in a very consistent way each week at this time. So I'm going to have to evaluate and make some decisions for myself on how I'm going to plan for that. I have a couple of choices at this point in my planning. I can either budget smaller amounts at the beginning of the month and larger amounts in flexible spending in those middle paychecks, because that is how it's being spent. And the reason it's being spent like that is because the rent takes so much money, and then sometimes I have another bill tied into that pay period, that there isn't much left to spend on flexible spending, so I'm forced to reduce, which then means the next pay period I spend more to kind of restock the larder, if you will. The other option I have is to plan ahead. So when I have that big budget in the middle, kind of sock some away so that I can save it and have it available to keep my flexible spending consistent in future weeks. So we're going to have to see how that plays out for me, and I may have to try it different ways on each month to see what works out best. All of that being said, let's go over my flexible spending, what I've estimated for this pay period. Again, my groceries, $110 a week for a total of $220 this pay period. My dining out, I have estimated to spend $25 a week for a total of $50 a pay period. This estimate is turning out to still be a little bit too low to be realistic, just based on how I spend in dining out. Because of what things cost right now, this is really one time going out each week. So maybe 2 times if I go buy the lowest thing I possibly can. So we'll see. I also am trying very hard to just cut down the amount I'm actually spending in here. So I still need to focus on this. This is still where I feel like there's the greatest waste in my budget. And an area that I need to just really take control of. But taking control of this tiny little area means changing a lot of other behaviors, purchasing more groceries, planning ahead meals, getting those cooked, packing lunches, all of those types of things. That's not just simply saying do not go out to eat and do my little knuckle scraping to shame, shame, shame. I have to make other behavior patterns to make it easier to force myself to cook at home and not go out. But this is where I feel like the greatest waste is, and I need to really, really grab a hold of that. Then I have my transportation. I have estimated spending $20 a week for a total of $40 a pay period. Right now, I can take the bus to work 4 days a week if the weather is nice, and that costs me $1 each way. I had estimated I would need to fill the gas tank up 4 times in this 6-week period. I had estimated that that would be 1 time within this 2-week pay period. Again, we'll see how that is. When I did this estimate, I did $3.79 a gallon times 10 gallons. The last time I had really paid attention to what gas was, it was $3.79. It actually has gone down since then. My car tends to hold it's usually about 10.5 gallons that I end up having to put in when I go fill it up. I'm the kind of person who drives the car down till the light comes on, and then I go find the closest place to go put my gas in. I'm definitely not the person who fills up the gas when it gets just around a half a tank or 3/4 of a tank. That has never been who I am in any of my budgeting, and it's not who I am in filling up the gas. Will that change over time? Perhaps. It's not an area that I think is a really big deal. I definitely have lived with people who only let the tank get halfway full because you never know what life's going to throw at you and where you're going to be in an emergency. I only do that when I'm on road trips. When I'm on road trips, I never want to get below a half a tank before I'm looking for the next place to fill it up, because the last thing I want to do, obviously, is be on a stretch of lonely highway where there's nothing but grass for miles and miles and have run out of gas. That just won't happen. But that's the only time in my life where I do that. Anyway, $40 a week for $40, I'm sorry, the pay period for gas. The next thing I have in my estimate is art. Art is something that's very important to me for a lot of reasons, and that's part of why I have brought that into the channel, to bring my personality in. That is something that needs its own category for flexible spending because it happens very consistently. Each project has new things it's going to need, and that can't be just lumped in with miscellaneous. Again, it's too consistent, it's too important, it has its own category. But this is the first month I gave it a category. So I estimated $10 a week for a total of $60 a month. And this is another one where I might have to kind of evaluate project by project and plan that very specific project needs within my budget. The last month, what I had in May, I knew when I was working on that project that I didn't have all of the supplies yet that I needed to complete it. This project I'm working on in May, I knew I had pretty much everything I was going to need to get that done. There wasn't going to need to be a lot of purchases for that. But I still gave myself a consistent amount each week to go to that just in case. And so far, only on one day in this entire month have I spent anything related to this particular project under this category. So I've given myself $20 for this pay period. We'll see how that goes, and we'll have to see what happens in my budgeting going forward in this particular category. I think that this might not stay consistent week after week after week for the entire year. I think this is going to be something that kind of ebbs and flows for me. And then the last thing I have here in my flexible spending is the miscellaneous. And the miscellaneous is kind of a catch-all category for me. This is the things that show up every once in a while, kind of out of the blue, things I don't have any awareness of that have to be handled. The example would be earlier in the month, I had to go to Staples or Office Depot or Office Supply, whatever it's called where you're at, and get some forms copied and sent to my email via PDF so that I could send that in for tax forms. That's not something that I knew ahead of time I was going to need to do. I thought I was going to make some photocopies and fax it off from work, and the fax machine wasn't working in the way it was supposed to at work. So then I was forced to go spend this money. I didn't have an option of waiting till next month. I had a very limited window of time where I needed to be able to do that. And so that falls under this miscellaneous category. The other thing that falls under this, in my mind, is those one-off things. If I have to go buy a shower curtain and shower rings because it's time to replace that because periodically you need to, that's not something that's going to happen frequently. That's a one-off type of thing. I like to go to a place called the Green Bee, which is I don't know really exactly how to explain it, but it's essentially a refill store. I just kind of call it the hippy dippy store. I'm going to get homemade soaps. I'm going to be able to get laundry soap and bar soap refilled. This place doesn't have it, but some of the refill shops, you can get your soy sauce refilled. You can get olive oil from a refill bin. Those are the, and that's obviously not my main shopping. I'm not doing all of my groceries from that particular place. I couldn't, and I wouldn't want to. The cost would be astronomical. But that falls under miscellaneous for me. I have to make a special trip to that place to get that, so that's miscellaneous. I've given myself only $10 a week for a total of $20 a month for this pay period, but I'm finding that that's probably not going to be realistic, and I may have to increase that as we go forward, maybe just in the beginning, as I'm, again, not aware of what's reality for me. So that's it for my flexible spending. That is $350 I've estimated I might spend in my flexible spending this pay period. It'd be great if it sticks to that. If you've been following along, you will know that flexible spending has been a challenge for me in some aspects. So then what I'm going to do here at the end is just kind of go over what the totals of income and outgoing looks like for us. So my ending balance, my income again is $1,140. My fixed expenses is $546.30, and my flexible spending is $350. So if I take that away from the $1,140, I'm left with the potential to have $243.79 left over at the end of this pay period. Again, I would really like this number to be higher than it is. I certainly don't want that to be in the red, but if I could get away with spending less in my flexible spending, that would be ideal. But that's where I'm at, setting up this next 2 weeks as we close out June. I have high hopes for what that's going to bring. The next thing I want to go over, let me just say, for those of you who that's all you're here for is to see this budget, I thank you for joining me today, and you have fun with whatever it is you're doing in the rest of your day. For those of you who are here on my crafting journey, we just spoke to each other a couple of days ago, so not a whole lot has changed on this project, but I will just go over a refresher real quick. My granddaughter and I, a couple of years ago, had gone to Joann's to pick out a project, and she picked out a heart-shaped pillow form and some fabric she wanted on that. I was able to get the entire cover for that heart-shaped pillow form sewn, and had considered that done temporarily, and then I used what was left of the fabric to make a blanket. That is sewn and done. Then I went back and addressed the things I was unhappy about with that pillow cover and redid those things, and I'm significantly happier with that now. Then the next thing was repairing the heart-shaped pillow form. When I had been stuffing it into the cover initially, I ended up tearing the cover of the pillow form, and so what I'm working on now is I have done a sashiko style stitching patch job to reseal where it was torn here. So what I did was I took a piece of fabric and stuck it in where that big hole was. I stitched that big hole closed, and then I stitched through that patch there. This cover is a very thin piece of material that tears very easily, and I knew that simply stitching this was going to create a lot of weak spots that were likely to tear again. So I put that fabric on the inside and stitched it closed, and I'm going to put another piece of fabric over it on the outside and then stitch in the opposite direction of where these are, so that as this particular weak spot is being tugged and pushed into the pillow form, as I'm pulling in here, it's going to, these stitches are going to go through the two pieces of tightly woven fabric and are less likely to tear this cover. So that's where I'm at. I've got the one layer, I'll have to do the second layer, and then I do have to address this small tear that's here in this corner, and that's going to be a little bit harder to patch just because of how tight that workspace is. And I won't probably be able to stuff some fabric on the underneath layer, so I'll have to just be working from above. So I don't know that we'll get that tight. But that's probably just one more night's worth of work to get that finished and stuffed in the pillow form. And then what I will be left with is to take these scraps that we have left and turn those into basically doll blankets and or scraps for the kids to make Barbie clothes with, and really use this leftover fabric bits up to have not much go in the waste bin. So that is where we are at. I do have about another 10 days left before June is officially over and I start going into July. And when I go into July, I will have another project I'm working on. So I do fully expect this project to be completed within that time frame. So that's very exciting to me. That is where I'm at today. Not a whole lot of changes to show in this project. I thank everyone who has decided to stay all the way to the end. Wherever you're at and whatever it is you're doing today, have fun, okay? Thank you now. Bye-bye.